Hi, if you're interested in growing alliums, an ornamental onion, this is the video for you. My name is Mac and I want to tell you everything you need to know about growing allium. There are over 600 varieties in the allium family. They're in the same family with this, which is a beautiful onion. This is the kind you eat. Alliums are the kind that you grow for the blooms. But if you let this onion grow and set out a bloom, a stalk, you'll notice that there are a lot of similarities in what this looks like and what this would look like. They're also in the same family with amaryllis and agapanthus. You notice some growth similarities in these plants, but alliums are what we're focusing on here today. Why grow alliums? Well, you can't beat the aesthetic appeal of an allium. Tall and statuesque with that beautiful globe top. Some have flat tops, but if you look at it in the garden, they stand out, especially if you group them together. They look beautiful grouped together in a perennial border. If you have some of the shorter ones, you can group them together in a pot, and I think the alliums are a wonderful addition to any border garden. A couple other great aspects of alliums, that they are low maintenance. They don't take a lot from you. Once you get it planted in the ground, it can sit there and grow, coming back year after year because it's a perennial, and they are very resistant to pests. So those are some of the great reasons to add alliums to your garden. They don't take much from you, but they can give you a lot of return year after year. And I love planting a plant once and having it come back over and over again. But let's get into a little more detail about allium. Commonly called alliums are ornamental onions because they're in the same family with the same onion that you eat, which this is a regular eating onion. The bulb for allium is very similar, typically smaller. There's some of different sizes and shapes, very similar, same family. They're also in the same family with this plant, which is an amaryllis. So same bulb type shape, nice bulb here. Also in the same family with this plant, and you almost can't make it out from the alliums, which are also growing here, which this is agapanthus. Amaryllis, agapanthus, all in the same family with alliums. This is a beautiful allium. This is Allium Globemaster. And so the best time to plant alliums are in the fall. And you want to plant the bulbs at about 3 times the height or the depth of the bulb. So let's take this and say if this was an allium bulb, about 3 times this height deep, which would be roughly 6 inches. That's about how deep you want to go. And then if you want to space them apart, about 2 bulbs separate. So this one, move it over, go over one more, and that's where you plant that one. That's about the distance you want to put in between your bulbs if you want to plant them. But you can plant them in the fall. You can't plant them in the spring. They just won't come up for you until the next year. However, if you go into a garden center, you can get lucky if your garden center has one of these. This is Allium Globemaster. Now, the wonderful thing about planting alliums this time of year is that you know exactly where you want to put it in the garden. You can see exactly where it is and the size and shape of it. Although it's going to cost you quite a bit more to buy them individually versus buying them in a bag in the fall. I would suggest buying them in the fall, but if you didn't get it last fall and you have the opportunity to pick them up now, you can pick up some really great alliums. Now, this is Globemaster, one of the tallest, and has a beautiful purple globe sitting at the top once it blooms. 1 bulb equals 1 bloom. Here is another allium, and this one is Purple Sensation. Much smaller, kind of a purple to red bloom, really nice, but a smaller globe. A lot of it tends to be about the size of that bloom, and that bloom head is going to be a bit smaller for this one. Here's Allium Purple Rain, which is a really nice purple. Again, I'm only getting 1 in this pot. So there's 1 in each pot here. If you were to try to pack out a lot of a perennial border with this in this manner, it would cost you a lot of money. Not advised. And as I mentioned, alliums are really easy to care for. Again, when you're going to plant this, you want to go down about the depth of 3 of these down. You put in a little fertilizer, slow release fertilizer at the bottom of the hole with it, and then water it in, cover it back up. It's insect resistant, it is pest resistant, it's definitely also deer resistant, so you can plant it and forget it. It'll come back year after year. There's a couple key things though. After the allium blooms, you can leave that stalk up and let that sit there through the rest of the growing season. It'll look really beautiful. It'll be statuesque, it'll add height to the border, or you could cut it off. It's your choice. But whatever you do, don't cut back the foliage. Just as with this agapanthus and here with this amaryllis, after it blooms, the main thing you want to do is leave that foliage. That's what's going to really feed that bulb for next year to ensure that you have a bloom coming back the following year. If you don't get the opportunity to pick up alliums in the spring like this, where you can pick them up in a pot, this one actually has two, because when alliums propagate, they put off little bulbs to the side, and I can tell that this has a larger here and this smaller little leaf that's going to be a little bulblet that's going to produce another allium. They tend to reproduce as that manner by producing bulblets, and they can also reproduce by producing seeds. So some alliums produce prolifically. So you want to make sure that you're keeping an eye on that if you don't want your garden to be overrun with one particular type. Alliums require a moderate amount of watering. Whether you're planting them in a pot or you put them in the ground, make sure not to overwater, because alliums sitting with soggy feet or sitting with that bulb submerged in water will likely rot and won't come back the next year and may die in the middle of the growing season. For some of your taller alliums, it's going to get to be up to about a meter tall or a meter and a half tall. Globemaster, Gladiator, or some of the other really tall ones. You may want to stake them, because if you're concerned about it, if you live in an area that has a lot of wind, you want to stake it. Make sure though, as you're staking it, you don't punch a hole down into the bulb. That could kill the bulb and render the whole process null and void, so to speak. So make sure that when you're staking, you move off to the side a little bit and stake in a manner to where you're not poking a hole into the bulb. And those bulbs will get larger and larger as the years go by. Every 3 to 5 years, you want to lift your alliums. If they have any little bulblets or side shoots, pull those off, separate them, and plant them back in the ground at the same depth that they were before. This is a great way to make sure that your plants are propagating and multiplying and have the space they need to grow and thrive. As I mentioned, alliums are pest resistant, so you don't have a lot of pests. There are some onion flies that make create a problem for you. You have to watch out for that. And then a lot of people suffer from root rot. Planting an allium in dense, heavy soil, if you don't have a lot of drainage, that could cause the bulb to rot. So you want to watch out for that. If the plants are growing a lot of foliage, but you're not getting blooms, that could be a lot of crowding going on there. Again, go in, lift those bulbs, separate them out, give them the appropriate amount of space, replant them, and the next year you can check to see. If you have your alliums that come up and they're yellow, make sure you get enough sunlight for them. And if your alliums are falling over every single year, every time they come up, they fall over, and maybe a case where they're not planted to the right depth. So make sure, again, 6 to 8 inches, 3 times the height of the bulb, but roughly around 6 to 8 inches is the depth that you want to plant your allium. If you're planting them at this time of year though, in the spring when this is out and it looks like this, you have to plant it at roughly the depth that it is in the pot. So if it's at this depth in the pot, you have to roughly go at the same depth. You can go a little bit deeper, maybe another inch or two, right? But you don't want to drop them whole majority of this shoot below grade, below the ground level, because it may not grow right for you. It may kill the bulb. So you want to go just a little bit lower, add a bit of mulch, and then that should work out for you. If you want to make sure at the end of the year this is right there at the right depth, you can always lift it at the end of the season, drop it a little bit lower. But for right now, to make sure that this plant thrives, plant it at roughly the same depth that it is in the pot. This is a larger pot, and you can see this here is planted. This is a bit more shallow, so you can go up to where you see the leaves are starting to separate out. Maybe you want to go maybe up to about right there. You definitely don't want to go up to here. You may kill that plant. Maybe you go up to about this point right here, put a bit of mulch over it, drop it down. Again, in the fall, you may want to lift these and drop them a few more inches down into the ground. These bulbs are going to be smaller, so you may not need to go as deep, but be aware that you may want to replant this in the fall. Right now, I would again suggest planting it at the depth, roughly the depth, maybe a little deeper of the pot. As mentioned, alliums are perennials. They're going to come back year after year, and they're going to look good year after year. In the spring, fertilize. After it blooms, don't worry about fertilizing it. Keep an eye on it. Make sure the plant continues to look good. Make sure that foliage is nice and green. A lot of good sunlight is what that plant will need. You don't want to plant that in the shade. A lot of sunlight will ensure that that bloom continues to grow. Again, separate it every 3 to 5 years. Lift, separate, replant. So let's talk companion plantings and where alliums look best in the garden. I think if you have some of the smaller varieties, such as Purple Sensation, some of the smaller varieties will look good in the pot. I would not leave this in this size pot. I would put it in a larger pot, and I would put more in. I think about a good grouping of 6 to 9 in a pot would look really good, especially with the low foliage plant. So the one plant is growing low, the alliums tending tall and statuesque around it. I think that would look really good. I would not put the larger alliums in a pot, such as Globemaster or Gladiator, unless you have a really large pot where you can get that allium at the right depth where the plant won't fall over. I prefer my alliums in my perennial borders. I plant them amongst my peonies or amongst the roses. I also plant them amongst agapanthias or some of my hermicales, which are daylilies, because you can't even see the foliage. When the foliage dies back, you won't even notice it, but you have the hermicales or the agapanthias at one level and the allium blooms standing high above that. The main thing to think about with alliums is that it's going to be tall. Some of the larger ones stand about 3 meters or higher than that, which are going 3.5 feet tall. Large booms, large globe blooms at the top. That's something that you really want to keep an eye out for. It grabs the eye. So think about where you want that height in your border. That's a great place to place some of your best alliums. So if you want to add alliums to your gardens, I suggest giving it a go. They're easy to take care of. They're beautiful plants and they're so statuesque and tall and they're really eye-catching. So if you want to add some alliums, go out and get some. If it's in the spring, you can maybe get some like this. If it's in the fall, you can get them as bulbs. I suggest you buy them as bulbs. Plant them appropriately and you'll have a beautiful display the next year. If you're at a different time of year, put it down, write it down and keep it in your journal and make sure you have it on your mind for the right time to purchase. You can get them in the spring or you can buy them in the fall, but in either case, go ahead and get some alliums. Drop down in the comment, let me know what you think. And if I missed any key points about it, also put that in the comments. Hey, if you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe. Follow along. I love to talk about plants. I love to go and visit beautiful gardens, and I love to have you along with me. Until next time, take care.